Whether officials know it or not, the culture that they promote, which often involves punitive and competitive measures, can offset someone's life, especially youth of color.
Kids get kicked out of school with no knowledge to support themselves in life. Kids drop book smarts and pick up a street mentality.
It's extremely imperative for educators to understand where these young people are coming from.
I've had 5 of my closest friends die in the streets after being kicked out of their home schools.
The struggles that they go through on a daily basis.
I felt criminalized within my school system for the smallest things.
Rather than look at them as a number, as a statistic, I think that the young people are more than that.
Schools don't realize not every kid is perfect, and no kid should have to suffer a jail sentence.
My name is Lady Quiceno, and we want to start off with, after that wonderful video, why we can't wait and why this matters. Martin Luther King once said that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. With that said, our objective relates to how it is important to give the youth self-empowerment and a voice so that they themselves find the solutions, because they are the best problem solvers of their own issues. The objective of this forum is to shed light on the voices and narratives of youth of color who have experienced systematic oppression through the educational and criminal justice system. A little bit about me. I was born in Colombia and I was raised in Boston. I'm passionate about education. I used to be a teacher, and I am now a youth and student advocate. This matters to me because I believe that education is important for all, but it's not given to all. And how do we do this? How do we shift this and work with at-promise youth so that they themselves can also dismantle the school-to-prison pipeline and finding holistic approaches to do so?
So hello everybody, thank you for being here. My name is James Mackey and I'm a community organizer, national activist, and I am the founder of Stuck on Replay. And Stuck on Replay is focused on elevating the community's voice, uplifting the community to play a major role into what's happening around criminal justice reform. And so we won't leave the community's voice outside of the dialogue and the changes and the policies that's taking place from legislators and policymakers. Because how can you make changes to policy without involving the people who are affected most by it, right? And so if we think about the school to prison pipeline, and we're talking about dismantling the school to prison pipeline, how can we dismantle the school to prison pipeline when young people are not allowed at the table, right? So there's been a lot of dialogue, a lot of events happening where the school to prison pipeline has been a thing and trending extremely well. However, I haven't seen too many young people at the table to share their testimonies around why the school to prison pipeline is affecting them on a personal level. So why does this matter to me? Originally from Chicago, Illinois. I remember vividly when I was in 3rd grade, I was kicked out of my 3rd grade school. I was 8 years old, and I will never forget this day that I sat in my principal's office along with my mother, and the principal specifically asked me, "Do you want to be here, son?" Now me, a young person that dealt with a whole lot of issues at home in my community, I said no. And so my decision reflected, in my ability to continue on in that school. And unfortunately, that allowed me to be out of school for 1 full month. And because I was out of school for 1 full month at 8th grade, and my mother was there, and Harley, she was there to support her son, right? And so it didn't really matter what the principal said, she was just making sure that I was okay. And I was out of school for a month, and unfortunately, I was set back school for that year. So I had to serve 3rd grade for a 2nd term. Fast forward, I was also kicked out of every public school that I attended when I moved to Columbus, Ohio. I was an angry, vicious young man that did not get a lot of attention at home. Again, I faced a lot of barriers outside of my community. I was one of the young people that got caught up in the street life, and because the street life caught my attention, school was not my intention. So I wasn't able to focus as much as I needed to. And unfortunately, again, like I said, I was forced out of every school that I attended. And so fast forward now, I'm here presenting Stuck on Replay because I think that it's important for us to not leave the young people's voices out of the school to prison pipeline dialogue and conversation that has been happening. If we leave these young people out, then the cycle will continue. They will be stuck on replay. And that's how we are pulling young people in. That's how we are pulling community in to really be engaged into what is really happening for young people, what's really happening in the community for people who are incarcerated, and how we need to dismantle the school to prison pipeline.
So our theme is we can't take the United States educational system for what it's worth. So with the saying that, are we being educated or incarcerated?
And for the issue that we have, according to the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or NAACP, there are approximately 2.3 million people incarcerated. People are growing. People are coming and growing in the United States. Statistics have shown that the growing population in the jails and the prisons are most likely, Black and Latino men, whom consistently being racially marginalized and criminalized for petty crimes. And it's still happening today, too.
Hello, everybody. My name is Keturah Brewster. I've been happy to be here. And so I just want to go over the consequence of if we don't address this issue that is affecting our youth of color. So as a result of the educational institutions heavily punishing students due to zero tolerance school policies and violations, students of color are not being fundamentally educated. They are being incarcerated. Overall, those punitive school policies are supposed to protect the safety of students, but it's actually becoming an inmate-generating institution. An inmate-generating institution. Like, this is supposed to be a system that's supposed to serve our young people. And so I'm going to introduce a video from a friend of mine who has a very striking story in her experience of the school to prison pipeline. She attended John D. O'Brien High School, which is an exam school in the Boston public school system. So while James pulls that up, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Keturah Brewster. I'm an organizer with the I Have a Future movement. It's a coalition of organizers and young people really trying to change the way youth are seen as criminals in our state. And we also make sure that there's sufficient funding for youth employment in the budget. But as you can see, like, these issues are hurting our communities. They're not helping them. And so I appreciate you all being here.
Hello, my name is Zaria Cooper. I represent Youth Force. I'm just here to share my story of mass incarceration and the discrepancies of people of color. When I was attending the O'Brien School, I've graduated in 2013, so that was a little while ago. I was in my beginning years of O'Brien. I was in 9th grade, and I remember walking to Madison Park High School, which is connected to O'Brien. I remember walking to Madison Park High School through the hallways with 2 of my friends. We had just went over there, just to walk over there and see our friends. And when we got there, we had our O'Brien School police officer approach us. And when he approached us, he asked us, what are you guys doing here? Which is a valid question. Upon him asking us that question, my 2 friends decided to run away from him towards Madison Park High School. I, on the other hand, calmly turned around and walked back to O'Brien as he started to walk back to O'Brien with me. So as we're walking back to O'Brien, he's giving me a lecture telling me, like, hey, you can get in trouble for trespassing, and, giving me the whole lineup of, what I was doing was wrong. At the time, I didn't really feel as though me walking to Madison Park was in any particular way harmful to myself or anyone. I mean, it could have just as easily been, but technically nothing was going to happen for me walking, down the hall to the other school. But as I went to go on and ask him how would I get in trouble for trespassing, again, we have a gymnasium in Madison, so the Bryant students actually attend the Madison school to do gym. But I asked him, how can I get arrested for trespassing at the school that my school is connected to? And before I could even finish my question, he pulled out his handcuffs, wrapped my arms around my back, pushed me up against the wall in a back stairwell, by myself, pushed me up against the wall, put the handcuffs on my hands. I was in distress. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to feel. I was just angry. I didn't feel as though it was right for that to happen because I don't feel as though I did anything wrong. And soon after, the Boston Police Department was actually called, and they came to escort me to B2, which is one of the Boston Police Departments in the city of Boston. So as the police came and escorted me, they actually had me in handcuffs, and the school put a shirt over my handcuffs so that no one would know what was going on. Upon leaving, like, my heart sank. I just thought like it was the end of the world. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to feel. I just knew that I was being criminalized for something so small and like so very small. They made me remove everything, and they basically shackled me to a chair after taking a mugshot and fingerprinting me. I didn't feel comfortable at all. I didn't feel like I was in place. I didn't feel like I was myself. I didn't feel like I needed to be in this place where there are other people coming in for assaulting other people or harassing, touching other people, violating other people's rights. I didn't feel like I was violating anyone's rights. So in that case, I felt very strongly about that, and after I had to go to court, and that was just basically a rough time for me.
Yeah, I just want us to sit in that for a minute and digest it, because it was a lot. So I want to open it up and hear some of your thoughts or reactions to the video. What do y'all think? What do you think went wrong in Zaria's story? Or how do you think that the resource officer could have handled that situation differently? Or do you not believe there was a wrong in this situation? But I just want to hear some of your thoughts. No wrong answers.
So she was arrested for disorderly conduct in her school? What was she arrested for?
I can't say. I don't specifically know what the charge is for, but from what she mentioned in the video, his motive was trespassing.
So if you have a question, just or a response to the question, just let me know and I can give you the mic so the video can pick it up. So I mean, what are your thoughts? How are we feeling? I know you all are probably still in shock, or are you used to seeing things like this? And if you are, how does this make you feel knowing that this is a norm for you? And if you can, just state your name. That'd be great.
I'm Jess. I'm a student here at the Ed School. I think what's really distressing about this is that it seems like the resource officer went in with like very much a deficit perspective and very negative assumptions about Zaria. And instead of seeking to understand or approach it to have a conversation, it was very accusatorial or accusative from the beginning, which I think then spiraled, although it doesn't seem like she did even anything wrong responding to that, but it seemed to just spiral out of control until she got to a point where she was not in control of the situation.
Hi, I'm Vanessa. I'm also a student here at the Ed School, and I've seen this happen so many times, and I think the issue is further than the resource officer. It goes back to the school policies or maybe even local policies, like trespassing is an automatic, you arrest, whatever. So I think it's deeper than the resource officer, and maybe he was at fault. Maybe she said something that he didn't like. I don't know fully because she didn't go into detail, but I think it's a bigger issue than just this one resource officer.
So, how do you think the resource officer should have handled this situation differently? How could he have handled this situation differently?
As an educator for a lengthy amount of time, I realized that it's all about communication and building relationships. And you can do that in a second, in an instant, if you just learn to talk and listen. And that was one thing that was seriously lacking in this police officer's resource repertoire. And I think that's something that needs to be dealt with when you're talking about anybody dealing with youth and children, from the cafeteria worker to the principal to even the superintendent. It's very important that people understand that by talking, you can simply diminish any kind of escalation, and more importantly, listening.
Thank you. Unless there was someone else, I think that was a perfect segue. I think there's a lot that we can do to change the culture in which these schools run in, and how our administration also handles situations. So my friend and coworker, Takari, he's going to come up and share his experience of the school to prison pipeline as well, because we got to make this real. This is something that we experience every day, and it can't just die through a video. So, yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. How you guys doing? I'm Takari Milton. Unfortunately, I had went to 3 different high schools. Got kicked out of 2 out of the 3. Oh yeah. So that's better. All right. So yeah, I went to 3 different high schools. Out of the 3 high schools I went to, 2 of them I had got kicked out of. Out of all the high schools I went to, there was a word I want to touch on, hypercriminalization, and slide please. And this word, hypercriminalization, is the process by which an individual's everyday behaviors and styles become ubiquitously treated as deviant, thank you, risky, threatening, or criminal across social contents. And I went through a lot of that in the schools, especially the 3 schools I went to: Osterguy, Tech Boston, and EMK Health for Healthcare's Academy. And going through these things, I felt like I was being dehumanized. I felt like devalued and discouraged on a lot of things, but it just mainly wanted me to push more. So, for example, my freshman year at EMK Healthcare's Academy, when I first went there, the first thing I noticed was, like any other schools that I went to, the majority of the students there, were urban African Americans, Black, Latino, and the majority of teachers, were white teachers. Right off rip, when I seen that, I felt like that I had to act a certain way, or like I knew there was a cultural difference there, and I would have to, like, when I came into class, I knew I would have to be a certain way and be on top of my game and work 10 times harder. During my time at EMK, during my time there, I outside of the school, I had got caught in some legal trouble within the school, which led to me being incarcerated for a little bit, for like a month, missing a month of school. During my time of the incarceration, the school. There you go. During my time at the incarceration, the school thought, which I never knew a school could do, they took a vote on whether if I should continue my education in that school. And when they took the vote, it was like, I think it was 10 teachers, and 8 out of the 10 teachers didn't want me going back at the school. And I didn't know until my mother had to come up to the jail where I was at and tell me that, when she was like, well, when you come back, we have to find you in a different school to place you in. And I didn't know what she was really trying to say until I came back and noticed I couldn't go back into my school, which I was doing good in the school. I never failed a grade from my ninth grade year to my ninth grade year, my sophomore year there. I never had failed a grade there. I was going to school every day, But the school just started to see fit to get rid of me quick, and it would be an easier process instead of just helping me out. So during that time, me and my mother was just confused on what we was gonna do, and like the schools that we was gonna go to, so they started giving me like level 3 schools or schools that had no college credit. So for example, the Burke, Charlestown, English, day and evening, certain schools like that, Community Academy, trying to seclude me and close me in on different schools which I can go to. Fortunately, with the help of my mother, I was able to go to Tech Boston Academy, which was the old Dorchester High School in Dorchester. When I first went to that school, that was the first time I've ever seen metal detectors in the school and cameras in the school. I've never seen that. In healthcare, there was never nothing like that. And this was also the first time I was also introduced to lab clusters. Now, for those who don't know what lab clusters is, lab cluster stands for learning adaptive behavior, but in Tech Boston, they didn't call it lab cluster. They wanted to call it crossroads. So how they determine if you are in the crossroad or lab cluster was based off of a trauma that happens outside the school. So for example, if a student was going through something outside the school, some type of severe trauma, and it was affecting them from learning, and it's affecting the other students, and it's affecting their other peers from learning, they would take that student. I'm gonna turn this off.
Just step away.
Yeah.
Step away.
So sorry about that. So if they feel like this kid's trauma is getting in between other students' education and his education, then they will take this kid.
Okay.
All right. It's working?
Yeah.
All right. So then they would take this kid and then they would seclude this person in a different area of the school. It kind of reminded me when I was incarcerated, something like they called it solitary. When somebody fights or disobeys the CO or something, they'll send you straight to solitary for a day or a month or whatever, and it's a secluded area. So I kind of seen it just like that, how they just take you out of, they're saying you can't learn in a regular setting with regular kids. So they feel like the trauma you went through, they put you as a special learning adaptive person and put you in a different part of the building where they give you, where they limit your education and stuff, So it's like that right there made me feel like, well, am I a lab cluster kid? Because I'm coming straight from a county jail, but I've never felt the grade before, I don't act out or nothing like that. I try to help my peers, so it's like, like I said, it discourages a lot of even the people who's not even in lab cluster, it discourages a lot of them because they can probably just wondering if I'm next or if my friends is over there, then their friend is getting picked on or whatever because they're in a different part of the school, Unfortunately, again, like when I went to EMK, I had caught another legal case at the school, which was forcing me to get kicked out the school again. But gratefully, I didn't have to be incarcerated, didn't have to do no county time or anything like that. I was able to go to Ostergard. At Ostergard, it was only thing that was there was a lot of the resources there wasn't good. Like some of the books wasn't on point. I was in my senior year and I was in classes with sophomores and freshmen and stuff like that, which kind of felt like my education was being limited again and being devalued, because we would have to go back and forth on learning senior things and then learning sophomore and junior things, which I've already learned, which is kind of backtracking, so there's just a lot of things that I see within this system that is still related to prison and can lead into prison too. So, thank you.
Hi, my name is Fania Joseph, and I'm the president of the Boston Student Advisory Council. And what I do is that I'm basically a student advocate where I advocate for the youth. And what I do is that I make sure that the youth know that they have a voice and know their rights. So if you don't know your rights, then we have the Boston Student Rights app that we created, and it has LGBTQ, the immigration acts and all of that, if you want to check it out. And what I'm talking about is hypercriminalizations and hyperpolicing and youth control and complex. That is constant negative reinforcement, according to Victor Rios, by the book Punish, technically. Do you still have that book? Yeah. Okay, so how would you feel about the school resource officers dragging an unconscious student through the hallway, whether she was wrong or right? As an administrator, and what would you do in the moment, and how would you respond? Think about it. I have witnessed a hypercriminalization happen to another student, where the student have refused to leave the school because they didn't have nowhere to go, and because they didn't have a good bond with the teacher in the classroom. I've transitioned from one school to the other school. Now attending DA, walking through metal detectors, and knowing that there's cameras watching me. I saw an act of hypercriminalizations and youth control complex. From what I've been hearing, the name of the school was already criminalized, but as I walked in there, it just wasn't what everyone had made it seem like. On the other note, don't get me wrong, those school resource officers didn't need to get placed in our school for us to have 4 to 5 different people who don't know us to walk in and out of our lives. So, 10 minutes after that incident in the hallway, the student tells the officer, drag her out of the school, and he calls the officers from the other schools to come and help him. I told my friend and a little cousin to go to class, but they have decided to leave school since the principal wasn't there, and the teachers just seemed like they didn't care. They got escorted out the school, where the girl got pushed down the stairs, and she pushed the officer right back, and they just started to fight. Okay, so within saying that, he just started dragging her up the stairs since she was already downstairs and back into the building. When we was trying to get him off of her, and they turned around and told us not to get inside of police business, and they had arrested 2 students due to the fact that they have only wanted to see what was wrong with her and if she was going to be okay. I couldn't leave the office until they have left the building with the 3 girls and brought her to B3 or B2, one of those. So with this saying that, how many of you had to walk through a metal detector when you were in high school or in middle school? Oh, sorry. The youth complex is a system in which school, police, probation officers, families, community centers, the media business, and the other institutions systematically treat young people's everyday behavior as criminal activities.
So what Fania alluded to was the youth control complex, and how, if you think about, these systems and these institutions, how they are criminalizing young people and are looking down upon them and are labeling these young people. It's similar to when people are incarcerated. You're labeled a criminal. You're labeled a felon. And so if you're putting these labels on these young people when they're in high school, knowing that they are still developing as young adults, you're kind of writing their history. And That's the issue with the school system. We have educators who are supposed to be educating our young people, who's supposed to be believing in our young people, empowering our young people, leading them to become the leaders of today and tomorrow. However, they are talking down to our young people. They are talking as if these young people are not human, as Taquari referred to. They are dragging young people down the hallway. Now, as educators, as administrators, if you saw that in your school, how would you handle that? Would you allow that to happen? Would you let that be okay? Is that okay? That's what happens when people are incarcerated. That's what happens when people are treated like animals. Animals shouldn't even be treated that way. But you're treating young people that way because of decisions that they've made, because of mistake that they've made. And just like, I'm sorry, what's your name, ma'am?
Akeisha.
Akeisha, just like Akeisha said, if you listen to young people, if you allow them to speak and allow them to express how they feel in those moments when they are frustrated, when they are dealing with things, maybe at home, then you'll get some information from them. Then you'll be able to support them. Like the teacher, like the principal never asked when I was in third grade what was going on with me at home. They didn't know that I had a father that was in prison and was sentenced to 60 years to life in prison, and I grew up without a father. They didn't know that, my brother was recently jumped by a rival gang in the same school. The same district wanted him to go to the same school district that the rival gang, jumped him in. So they didn't know that my family was going through these situations. So similar to my story, similar to Kari's story, similar to Fania's story, these young people are forgotten about and are really not listening to. And they can't bring the issues that they're dealing with at home into school because that's a problem. They don't want that in school. They need to have spaces for young people to be able to express themselves because they are emotionally messed up from what they are witnessing, what they are seeing. And if we are caging these young people and having them in the youth control complex, then we are definitely playing a major role in the school to prison pipeline. We are not dismantling it. So I want you to think about that as educators. And so I want to transition. We have a young man that unfortunately he wasn't able to make it here today, but I'm going to read his testimony. And this young man is going through a lot. And I actually work with him. I'm his case manager. And so I'm supporting him as he transitions. But I want you to read, I'm going to read his testimony. And I just want you to hear what I have to say, or what he has to say, because it's extremely important. Excuse me for 1 second. To me, the school to prison pipeline is nothing but a setup. Kids are kicked out of school with no knowledge to support themselves in life. I've been through it myself. Kids drop the book smarts and pick up the street mentality. School can give you many opportunities, but the streets only can give you two options: dead or in jail. Not all juveniles are bad. Some may have been raised in wrong or tight situations. School doesn't realize that no kid is perfect, and no child should have to suffer a jail sentence. I've had 5 of my closest friends die after being kicked out of school. I myself was a victim of the pipeline. I attended Tech Boston Academy. I felt like kids, like other kids, was disciplined less than me. I was in detention. I was in the detention office every other day in every class period. The main situation impacting me getting kicked out of school was an argument with my science teacher, who was gay. Now, Alonzo doesn't have anything against gay people, but this is his story. He came over to check my work and slid his hand down my shoulder. I then reacted disgusted and out of fear and told him to back up, don't touch me. We argued until I left and ran out the room to the school, to the discipline office. Afterward, I had a meeting with the principal and the discipline officer. The teacher who I had the conflict with was not a part of this meeting at all. Think about that. Yet, and still, they came to the conclusion that this school was not the best fit for me. I wanted to stay at Tech Boston Academy. I had a good relationship with my 8th grade teacher. His name was Mr. Kane. I remember when Mr. Kane and I shared a favorite basketball team, the Cleveland Cavaliers. After I would finish my work, he and I would watch our favorite basketball team on YouTube, and we discussed how LeBron James and Kyrie Irving showed hard work on and off the court. And that's a perfect example of what a good student relationship is like. One policy should be focused on positive relationships like that Mr. Kane and I had. You'll be contributing to the school to prison pipeline if you don't. Another policy that needs to change is the suspension. Being suspended won't teach kids anything. Most kids don't like going to school, and a suspension would only give a student a school vacation. This will help kids be outside and more which more they can cause more trouble and adapt to the streets. What the school system doesn't get is school is like a shelter from the streets. It's not safe out here, so that's why you it's not safe out here, so why should you stop someone's education to send them out in the dangerous path to death or incarceration? Just like 5 of my friends that never had a chance to wear a cap and gown, just like my 4 brothers in and out of jail wishing they had their education, the pipeline does not just go to the prison. It's from school to the streets, to the prison, to the grave. I strongly recommend and advise the school system to destroy the safety and to destroy the pipeline for the safety and security of our youth and generations to come. Listen to the students and find other ways to keep them in school. Schools should inform students about programs that help divert kids from jail, like the program that I attend, the program that I'm in right now, Changing Tracks. Not only am I back on changing my tracks, but my behavior has transformed tremendously. And lastly, I just want to say, if I can do it, anyone can. So I want that story to resonate within you right now. I want us to think about what he said, what Alonzo said, that school is not just from school to prison. We're missing a whole piece. It's from school to the streets, to prison, or the grave. I lost a younger brother from school straight to prison, 10 years. I lost another young brother from school, not to prison, but to the grave. This is one story. There's millions of young Black and brown and Latino young men and women who are facing this same story. And we need to change that. And so before I close, I just want to say that right here, the punitive social control. Punishment referred as the process by which individuals come to feel stigmatized, outcast, ashamed, defeated, or hopeless as a result of negative interactions and sanctions opposed by individuals who represent institutions of social control. What do you think the school system is? And millions of our young black and brown young people who are in low-income communities are dealing with the punitive social control. With that being said, I'm going to pass it to Keturah. Thank you.
Hello again. So like I said before, my name is Keturah Brewster, and I'm just going to share, right now I'm a student at UMass Boston, and I'm going to share my experience of when I was in high school and I attended Boston Latin School. And we talked earlier about the punitive measures that are embedded in our school culture, but I'm also going to talk about the effects of the punitive and competitive measures and how that has a traumatic effect on my life. So in my experience at Boston Latin School, I was completely underway with the dramatic culture shock transitioning from Mildred Ave Academy, which is a middle school in Mattapan, to Boston Latin School. Immediately, I felt marginalized. There was a complete isolation from me and who I was and whom I could relate to. BLS promotes a competitive atmosphere where your grades speak for you, and that was my experience. I was invisible until I was suddenly the top of my class. It wasn't just the academic pressure that I was up against when it came to my grades, but it was also the academic pressure I felt based on race. I never felt good enough, and I was always questioning my ability to excel and fit in. This complex is called the Imposter Syndrome, which is defined as describing high-achieving individuals who are marked by an inability to internalize their accomplishments and a persistent fear of being exposed as a fraud. This experience made me internalize the idea that academic performance gives you human value. What does that mean if a young person doesn't have the support that they need to focus on their academic careers? In another light, I have a friend who attended Snowden High School who didn't get that support. It was his senior year, and he found out he wasn't going to graduate due to a failing class, which would have held him back a year. Instead of offering the proper tools so that he could succeed, the administration decided to provide an ultimatum. Either leave the school or get expelled. My friend was devastated. I had to watch a young black male's dignity fall. It took him 2 years to build the courage and go back to school. I felt like my friend had given up on himself and disempowered by the same structure that was meant to uplift him. So in a sense, they also made him feel like an imposter, like he didn't belong. So criminalization is the process by which styles and behaviors are rendered deviant and are treated with shame, exclusion, punishment, and incarceration. So, y'all ready for the hot seat? So what I ultimately want all of you to take from this is, what are you doing as present and future educators to meet the needs of the young people that you serve?
I guess I can talk. I've been teaching. Oh, yeah, I got it. So my name is Tanisha. I teach at Tech Boston Academy. And I've been teaching for about 10 years. Taquari is my son. And I just want to say that this system is so deeply rooted that it's hard to dismantle. One of the things that I am doing as an educator is, first, it's all about raising awareness. So teaching teachers and admin about this, as well as advocating for our kids. Not only just my son, but advocating for all of the kids in my school, as well as helping parents become more aware. You know, those are like the three major things that I guess I'm doing as an educator. But again, it is so deeply rooted, it really is hard to dismantle without raising awareness. And then once you are able to help parents, teachers, and admin, as well as our youth become aware, then that's when you can start making some type of change.
Thank you.
Does anybody else want to respond to that?
There's a hand in the back.
Thank you. So, my name is Tracy Jones. I'm Assistant Director Diversity here, and I'm going to share something deeply personal because this is what we're talking about is not as simplistic as an admin or a teacher saying this system is wrong. She's a teacher here. I have educators here. And we come from the communities in which you are talking about. And even coming into the system, it is hard to work with the youth to even see that we are trying to do this work. And I'm saying it's deeply personal because I lost a friend last week who died suddenly, who was a principal in Baltimore public schools. And she quit her job because it was killing her, and it ultimately did. And so this is deeper than a teacher or a principal showing up and saying, you're good. It is a community issue that everybody has to play a part in because we are human just like you are, and we're going in to do the work, and we're not getting supported by the community and the kids in which we are trying to serve. So how do we work with you for you to understand that we are coming here to do this work to help you, but you can't beat us down? So as a wraparound question, I'm asking this because I speak to these people every day who are about to go out there, and their distress is the same as mine because I lost someone, losing so many Black women to stress and heart attacks and all other things, who are trying to just stay in education because they believe what you're saying. So I am putting it back because this is personal to me and I need to understand what we can do together as opposed to individuals.
I'm definitely gonna come answer that question right after we close the question section. We have a couple recommendations that we can revise, and I think it will speak to what you're asking for.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for sharing that.
My name is Jumani Kendrick. I am the program manager that James was referring to as Change the Tracks. And I'm also now founder of another organization called Beyond the Block, which focuses on entrepreneurship and mentorship. And to answer your question of what I'm really doing, and kind of one of the biggest things that, because I come from this same experience of where you went from school to the streets, and not to the grave, fortunately, but I was also, a victim of a gunshot wound and stab wounds. And I ended up incarcerated due to my activity in the street. I've quit school, and the thing that helped me turn around was more of my thought process. That where I started to value and devalue other things that I used to value. And I didn't really realize what those things were that were helping me change my thought process. I couldn't really pinpoint, hey, this is the thing that's helping me change until maybe 3 to 4 years later. But to really understand what it is that's going to help you change from that position, because like you guys said, these systems and these institutions are, so strong because it's the plan. Right? It's almost like it's proof to where it's not going to break because it has a plan and a system in place, right? It was the mindset that I changed that helped me gain different opportunities. And when I say a mindset is that I was taught to believe that I was going to die in the streets or I was going to be in prison for the rest of my life. And I was okay with it. It was forced into my brain to where it was something I accepted. And until I changed the thought of, okay, I'm no longer going to die in these streets, I'm no longer going to live my life in prison, is where I had some change. But what coupled with that was also too is that the education, not formal education, but the things that I gained as knowledge, also coupled with me changing my thinking, is another piece, right? And then there was opportunities that presented themselves to me, but I had to really recognize, is this an opportunity? Like sometimes we don't really realize what an opportunity looks like. You know, I was doing things where I was able to learn, but I wasn't getting paid for them. Sometimes young people think you should get paid to learn. I'm like, I'm just trying to stay alive. So some of that thought process was like, if I just go to this program for 2 hours, that's 2 more hours in my life that I stay alive because no one in there is going to shoot me. So those are the things I started valuing, like, okay, I want to live now. How do I do that inch by inch? Because every day and every second is where you could get killed or you could end up incarcerated. So, you know, my role is to make sure that I'm being a great role model for a young person, but at the same time, teaching them things that they can implement into their life. Because every person's life is different. And we can't, it's not a cookie cutter thing where you can take this one model and place it over everybody. And so my role is to really look at a person's life, have them assess it and do their self-inventory of what they do and don't want. And then to really be real with them, because they really don't sometimes, if they haven't felt death or haven't been directly incarcerated or hurt, they don't know what it's like yet. But I try to paint that picture as vividly as I can so they can get close enough to it to be like, oh, I get a little taste of it without them having to go through the same thing I went through.
Thank you so much.
So, Tracy, I think that in reference to your question around how can the students as well as the community support you, I think that, you know, it's hard for community to, you know, be at the table along with educators, because it seems like the time frame when the meetings need to be had and when the events are happening, you know, community has other priorities that they have to attend to. And I know as educators, you all have families as well that you all have to attend to. But I think that we have to make that time, and we have to make that, you know, make that opportunity happen. So, and also, I think that it also plays a major role into, like, I know that educators are backed up on, like, standards, like, you know, the federal standards. And so, like, it's not about just, like, what can the community do, but, like, we could help support you all and push back on the federal government. Right? Because they are pushing these standards that are putting you all back on deadlines, and students are, you know, not acting right and so on and so forth, because and you don't understand how to address it in that moment because you're trying to get through your lesson plan, because you're taught to get through your lesson plan. It's hard for you to actually get through it when you have young people that don't know how to respond to certain things because they don't know how to, you know, what you're teaching, because they have other issues going on, like, oh, they lost a friend. Right? So how can young people deal with that, or focus in the classroom? And the teachers, how can they focus on, you know, going through the actual lesson plan, knowing that they have disruptions, but that's how the young young person is expressing themselves. But again, I think it goes back to how can we challenge, we're talking about, you know, we're challenging administrators and educators, but how can we challenge the legislators who are creating these policies? We have people who are creating these policies that are not living in the communities or reflecting the community that they're making these policies for. Does that even make sense? And how can we come to the table collectively together? I think that this is a start today. I'm pretty sure that there's numerous opportunities that's happening around our country and around Massachusetts around this. But I think that, you know, what's the next step is the question. And I think that it will be important for us to have follow-up after this to continue building upon that. But I'll leave it at that.
Took the words right from my mouth.
Okay, sorry. I tried to tell you can have it, but, you know. So before, I'm going to just go to her.
Going with that, I also think there needs to be diversity and inclusion training for everybody that goes to school in this country, no matter if it's a public or private school. There's so much history that we as Americans don't know, especially African Americans and Latino Americans and Asian Americans. We don't know our own history. And I think if policymakers had to learn that to make laws, I think a lot of laws would be different. We have people who go through higher educational systems without knowing the knowledge that they need in order to help different community members. and then they're making policies that really impact people of color most often, with these policies based on their understanding of life. And a lot of it deals with institutional racism and oppression. And I personally believe people are, a lot of people think they're doing the right thing, but if you don't have that back knowledge, how are you really helping people? And we're not encouraging those conversations to be had. We're not encouraging the studying of our history to be done. So it's kind of gonna continue in this cycle if we don't try to improve it.
How you doing? My name is Samuel Pierce. I think one of the problems with education is the class size. And I think part of that is because of the teacher to student ratio. I think that if you take away the geography part, a school is a school, a child is a child. I think children these days can actually learn a little bit faster. I know myself, I learned my multiplication tables in the 4th grade. However, I was able to teach students in AmeriCorps through City Year and Jumpstart how to do their multiplication tables first in the 6th and 3rd grade with City Year, and then as young as kindergarten with Jumpstart through various techniques. And so I think part of it is to have the imagination, but also to limit the class size, because I think a lot of our children are very intelligent, but if they don't have enough face time with the teacher, then they're going to be left behind if they have a question. And I think it's also not good to pass students along. They have stories about college athletes. I believe it was with the North Carolina Tar Heels. They're professional, well, not professional, but college athletes that were at a 6th grade reading level. And the only reason why anyone even paid any attention is because they're in March Madness. And I think that we need to pay the same attention that we do with sports, with math and with science and things of that nature. And I think of something that Madison Park High School does in Boston, which is automotive technology. Benjamin Franklin does that, but also West Philly High School in Philadelphia. Their physics class is actually building cars, and the way that they graduate and they move on through their classes, they actually build a car and they compete. And I think using some of that, or using your imagination. I remember watching on 60 Minutes something about a comic book and how they would use comics to see how fast Superman was flying, or what direction or what angle Spider-Man would have to be if he would navigate. And I think these are the types of things, or using construction. We have a country that's going to be going through infrastructure changes, and maybe using chemistry and the cement, and teaching kids about cement and chemistry, things of that nature. So just being a little more creative.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
And I agree. I think there's a lot that needs to be done as far as restructuring the system so that we're more intentional about what do we want the future to look like. I heard that. But to that, I want to open it up for you all to ask us questions, if you have any.
Before that happens, I'm sorry. I just wanted to make a comment based off of what Sam and my brother Jamani said. So Jamani, again, his organization is working on creating future entrepreneurs. So, most of what Sam, and I think what's happening in the schools that you alluded to, they're doing a great job with creating opportunities where you got young people learning construction and learning how to build, cars and so on and so forth. But that's like working class. How can we get young people to also be looked at as entrepreneurs? And so that's that imagination that can really help young people aspire to become extremely successful. So I know Takari, he told me back in the day, he used to sell candy at school. And the reason being is because he didn't want to take all the money out of his mom's pocket, because his mom had to, make ends meet for his sister and everybody else. So he took it upon himself to sell his own candy at his school. That's an entrepreneurial mindset. So again, we got to think about how can we create entrepreneurs and not just create working class young people.
I had a couple questions. Just working in education, I found it really hard sometimes to build relationship with some kids just based on the trauma that they've gone through. They're not really ready to open up. And then there's walls between what they may have shared with a counselor or counselor privileged information. And so having to dig because you know something is going on and you know they're shut down for a reason, but you really don't know why or how to reach them or what might trigger the wrong response. And so just suggestions from you all for working with children who or youth who are unable to really verbalize what's going on with them.
So I know for me, when I was on the bracelet and I was going to Tech Boston, I noticed, even though my mother was working there, I noticed some of the teachers like off rip was like kind of judging me. But then there was like probably I'll say like 2 or 3 teachers and like some disciplinary who I know was really genuine. So for example, there was a teacher, Mr. Malinga. He was a Caucasian teacher, but he cared you could tell he cared so much for the students. So for example, he would like make jokes with us, or like he would. When we would have certain conversations in the class, like even if it wasn't about sports, like it could be something like that happened to somebody around the corner or something, he'll chime in on it, but like to the point where it's not getting too personal, but something that will have us think, more about ourselves and everybody around us, and then he would also like make jokes with a lot of especially with the dudes, like he would make jokes with us and like and tease us and stuff like that. Stuff like, little stuff that he's seen us doing, how we would interact with each other, but like he would do it, but like in a professional manner, So I don't know if that makes sense, but like he would be he'll be nonchalant with it, but like he would be opened up and have us be open, Like I started getting to the point where like I got opened up with him, like started talking about like my court cases and like what I was scared of and stuff like that, So like certain stuff that I feel like I didn't even know within myself, and I started talking to him about certain things. Same thing with Jamani. When I first met Jamani, it wasn't like I was like, who's this dude? Like he was like any other regular. I felt like he was any regular dude, and like but with the thing about him, Jamani had experience and had a way out, So it was a double hit. So it was like, dang, this dude done did way more than me, done did it again, and done switched his life around. So it was like, that's something like I know that could really, I was like, I know I can do it, and I know I can help somebody else do it because he's helping me do it. And I know like while I'm still in my youth, I can reach somebody who's 18, 17, and they can reach somebody who's 15, 14, and they can probably reach somebody who's probably like 10, 9, and they can probably, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's a ladder. But unfortunately, and the only sad thing I can probably say is like the ladder starting from bottom up. We have to start from up down because it's affected and we still got to go down. So yeah.
So I'm gonna let you get a chance, but I just want to respond and then I'm gonna pass it to her and then I'll come back to you. Okay. So my question is your school trauma? The school that you're teaching at, or is it trauma informed? Have you ever had an opportunity to have a few professionals come in and teach trauma-informed principles to your school, or?
No.
Okay. Well, I definitely would recommend that. And I would say that one of the most important things about, having a student-teacher relationship, it's all about like creating a sense of community with your students. And if we are coming in, meeting our standards and trying to say, okay, I need to do A, B, C, D, rather than saying, I just want to check in on Takari and see how he is. I want to check in on, really get to understand the young people and build a relationship with them first before you start with actual saying, sit down, shut up. Go to page 9 or whatever the case is, and and diving into your lesson plan, but really get to know them first.
Okay. So I went to a school where, like at first, it was just like a student to teacher ratio rate where it was like 25-1 or 30-1 teacher. So it was like a problem for me because it's just like, okay, I need attention, and I'm just like, How am I going to get that attention? How am I going to get all the help that I need? So I transferred to DA. And like I was saying before, they made it seem like Dorchester Academy was a bad school. But like knowing me, I'm like a judgmental type of student, where it's like if I don't like the education, I'm gonna say something. So I went there, and it was kind of different because like there's like less students there because it's so-called a bad school. But once you go in there, like you're actually learning something, and it gives you an opportunity to graduate early and catch up on the credits that you need. So they started this trauma program where it's like if a student's having trouble or they know that like you have problems with another student in the school, like they bring you together and they speak, like we do restorative justice circles. And like, yeah, we do that, and we like try to implement it every single other week or when we have a problem in the school. So within me saying that, I'm just like trying to say like, don't judge a book by its cover, because it's just like, I went there and they thought I was a bad student. So it's just like, okay, do I have to be bad to go to that school? And like now, the teachers, I actually don't have to wait until after school to get the help that I need. I could go straight into that classroom whenever I want to. Like, for example, we have like Apex class. Like, you could go in there whenever you want to. The teacher could help you. Like, it depends on like what class it is that you need help with. And like, to me, I'm just trying to say is like, if you have opportunities, don't let it go. Like, keep on chasing the opportunities that you have. Just take them as it comes your way. And yeah, pretty much.
Can I just squeeze 1 minute in there? Just one, just one.
Okay. Afterward.
Oh.
She actually
okay.
was first,
Okay.
so I just
Sorry.
wanna kind of
All right.
yeah, thank you.
I think you all are saying a lot that is hitting close to home. I've been in education actually since I was 15 as a paraprofessional. And then immediately after college, I went into the school system because I wanted to work with children who were like me, because I went to 12 different schools growing up, and it was educators who kept me in the fold of education. I think many of you are saying a lot of things that are relevant, but I also sense, in all honesty, that there needs to be a deep-seated change in the way that we're thinking. I truly believe that trauma-sensitive education is important. I think that people get upset when they hear diversity. They almost have pushback, especially when 80% of the schools in our nation are by people who are not like the children they're teaching. And in all honesty, if I have a background that is totally different from the child that I'm dealing with, I probably can't relate to my students. And more than likely, the teaching training that I got is not going to help me understand how to build relationship, because it's talking about standards, it's talking about assessment, but it's not talking about relationship building. So I say all of that to say, I thought your question, Vanessa, was really good, because a lot of teachers can relate to students. I'm very proud of the fact that I've worked in low socioeconomic communities like mine, and I've only had one suspension, and it was by a child who called a young black male a wrong word, and he wasn't even a black or brown child. Disappointed me because it messed up my record, but that was the real. So I think that relationship building is true and valid, but if I don't come from that background, and if I don't understand that, I really want to know from the youth, and this is really helping me with what I want to do when I leave. How do you think we truly can break down that relatability factor so that we can get people who are not in these communities and trying to understand to truly identify and work with our children? And I think that's something that actually takes creativity, because after doing this for so long, I see the same things happening, and it's very frustrating.
Well, she just summarized everything. I didn't just say so. Snap. Yeah.
Snap on that.
Hi everyone. I wanted to answer your question because I'm actually reading a book that emphasizes that. It's by Dr. Christopher Emdin. And this book talks about basically how educators who are coming from privileged backgrounds can go into the spaces of the communities that they're going to serve, the communities that they're going to educate. For instance, if you're coming from a privileged background or you're coming from a different race, get educated, educate yourself. Go out there and get into those spaces. Visit barbershops. Go into those communities. Get familiarized. We oftentimes don't like to step out of our comfort zones, and that's the issue. Yes. And then we have these, stereotypes or this misconceived situations that don't need to happen that can be avoided if you just get out of your comfort zone and head out into the spaces in the community that you're going to teach and really, really dive into it. Just as much as you would dive into a book. Put that theory into practice. And the books are there. We use these books, as a matter of fact, in order to actually help facilitate this forum. And these books are wonderful. Also, get educated with books that are not of just Eurocentric, with Eurocentrism or any Eurocentric backgrounds. We need to diversify. We need to start writing our history.
Cultural competence.
Cultural competence, highly important. So.
Hello. So I'm thinking a lot about your question, and I'm thinking about the school I came from in Orlando. The school was actually situated in a very affluent area, but they also bus students from the greater Orlando area. So you had a pretty diverse student population of children from very affluent families, and just a wide spectrum all the way to students who were from poverty, impoverished families and communities. And it really showed me, just from one, looking at the staff, we had a pretty diverse staff, and we saw a lot of the kind of damaging, problematic practices from all races of teachers. And one thing that I've noticed is that we all have been in this same racialized society. And so just seeing the impact that it's had on everyone and knowing how important it is, kind of to answering your question, to instill like self-examination and professional development, and how important that is to really understand how your worldview frames how you approach your work, how you see students, but that needs to be a regular practice for professionals in education. I don't think that we really emphasize that enough. So that's one thing that I would say, is that you really, in order to really genuinely do this work and do it well, you have to constantly examine yourself, examine your bias, and be comfortable doing that in order to really reach students.
I was just going to ask really quickly. I know myself in college, usually after every class, we have a survey for our teachers. But certainly they didn't have that in middle school or high school. So what about the idea of having students being able to rate their teachers, obviously after they leave, so that they don't have any blowback or something? But I think that would also be telling, because in college people even have apps or little websites you can rate your professor, but you can't really do that in high school or middle school. And that would also be a way to see which teachers really should be looked at a little more carefully if they keep getting all these reports that this one particular teacher stands out as being the bad apple. So that might be an idea as well.
Well, thank you all for your questions and your insight and your experience as well. Like it was said numerous times, this is going to be hard, but it's not impossible. And this is a start. So we've thought of some recommendations. I think most of it has been said up to this point, but just to put the stamp on it. So
go ahead, I'm sorry.
Some of the recommendations that we had is don't immediately dismiss a young person's needs due to the fact that you're up against deadlines and want to maintain order. But become sensitive to the socioeconomic issues that the young people are up against. Do not use us as tokens. Usually in a classroom, if there's a star pupil, that a lot of attention is on that young person. And like it was said before, like no young person is perfect. And they need that mentorship, they need that guidance, they need that support to shift their mentalities, to shift their realities as well. and teach us about our real history, history that we can identify with, so that we can bridge what's going on in our schools. Yep. And then just to read some more recommendations from Zario. Students no longer desire to maintain the status quo. Allow them to question what they're learning in school. Believe that our voices matter, truly. That it is significant and valuable for youth of color to learn about their real, not their sugar-coated history.
So my recommendation is to work on addressing having more mental health and wellness in schools and making sure that school resource officers are trained for the de-escalation and trained to be with all students. Make it all part of the larger goal of dismantling the schools to prison pipeline, which is to fight against young people's oppressions and disproportionate measure of school discipline. Help students get into active programs that could get them out of the streets and give some of our young teenage Black, Latino males and females the opportunity to live as they are being kept busy. How can we empower urban youth? Perhaps by taking their strengths but not their differences.
So for me, I don't. You want me to read? I'll just say it. So the two recommendations that I had, one of them was for schools to have like a better community understanding. And saying that basically meaning like understand where the youth is coming from. You know, don't just write the youth off and just put him like in this little box or in this category, like this is what this kid is or this is what that kid is. At least just have some type of understanding and like see where that person or that youth is coming from and meet him halfway. You know, like how a lot of the teachers was doing with me. Instead of just judging me off rip, they would just try to meet me halfway and understand my thought process and how I see things and how I see life and try to work with me from there. You know, and another thing for recommendations I put was I noticed a lot of schools have themes. So for example, out of the three schools I went to, EMK, their theme, like their main thing they focused on was like the medical field and things that had to deal with like being a doctor or a nurse and stuff like that. Tech Boston had like technology and things that was under all technical stuff, and then Oster guy focused on like the rehabilitation of students and stuff like that. All three of those, you know, so like, and I went to college. When I went to Bunker Hill, my major was business administration and business management, and none of those three schools taught anything close to it or near it or with that type of focus. So instead of schools having some type of theme, I feel like they should take an interest on what each student will want to know, or majority of the students will want to know, and help them out with that focus, and so they can be able to better pursue their dreams and live good.
So, can we give it up for the young people?